I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast hosted by me, Erin Jane, where we have conversations about what it's like to perform a first responder role and the mental health challenges that can accompany it. Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today we are joined by Jen Lewis. I'm very excited for Jen to be joining with me today because she is a former dispatcher. She is a wellness and meditation coach. She's the owner of Wellness in the Uniform. She is also a fellow Overwatch Collective resource, and she's a Reiki Master Practitioner. So thank you for joining us today, Jen.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And like I was telling you offline just a couple of minutes ago, you are the first fellow coach for first responders I've had on the podcast. So super excited to
Coaches Unite.
Exactly. Talk about all things coaching with you in a little while, which would be great. But so I know a little bit about Jen's background and experience, but before we sort of delve into that, I'd really like to maybe know a little bit more about sort of what you were doing before you started down the role of becoming a first responder and the path to becoming a dispatcher.
Yeah. So I have been a licensed hairdresser for 21 years.
Wow.
I was doing that self-employed, worked in a salon in downtown Campbell of Bay Area, and loved it. Never did I not enjoy doing. I still do it. I still have clients that I've kept.
Oh, really?
During
That's
COVID.
awesome.
It kind of turned into like a speakeasy type of thing. And so I started making house calls during before the salons could open up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got probably 20 clients that they're like, please don't ever go back into a salon. Like I still have clients that I've been doing their hair for, almost 20 years that I still see because it's fun for me still. So I was a full-time hairdresser before, and every time a fire truck or a police car would go by, I'm like, what's happening? Where are you guys going? And I have law enforcement and fire in my family.
Okay.
And I had been talking to my brother-in-law, who's a lieutenant for a police department. He was like, why don't you look into dispatch? Why don't you give that a go? And I said, I've never thought about it, but that's a good idea. So I did. So I went through the hiring process and went through the channels that way. And then while I was in the hiring process, that's when my mom had passed away. But aside from that story, that's what I did before. I was a full-time hairdresser. So I wasn't 25 when I switched careers, right? Like a lot of these new trainees are younger. I was in my 30s. So it wasn't like, new kid on the block. It was like, whoa, holy, turning everything on its head. I went from being my own boss and making my own hours to, all right, this next 6 weeks, you're working midnights. The 6 weeks after that, you're working days, and then you're going to mids and then swings and all the things. So it was a hard reality check.
A big transition, I can imagine. Yeah. And I also would definitely. Having sort of, this is the first time that Jen and I have ever spoken, but I've obviously with the Overwatch collective, affiliation, I know of you and all that kind of thing. And can I say, like, you just have like the perfect personality as like a hairdresser. You're so bubbly and chatty, and like I'm like, as soon as you were like, oh yeah, I was a hairdresser, I'm like, yeah, you were. Like every great hairdresser I've ever known just has that easygoing, easy conversational personality.
That's very sweet. That's very sweet. Yeah, in fact, I had a client that she made me a plaque that sat on my station that said "Hairapist."
It's so true.
Because you tell your hairdresser everything. I know more about people's personal lives than than probably most bartenders.
I was going to say it's always either a hairdresser, a bartender, or oh god, I don't know who else. Yeah,
or your dog.
Yeah, except they can't talk back. So
exactly. Exactly. So, but you know what? I'm humbled by that, and I'm completely honored and touched and grateful that people feel comfortable
Yeah.
opening up to me. Um, and it's funny because we used to joke with my mom when she was alive that we couldn't go anywhere. Everybody would always stop her and want to tell her their life story, and I'm like,
You're like, let's
Mom,
go.
like what? And she would say, yeah, and she would say, everybody just needs somebody to talk to. And that still resonates in my ear
Yeah, I
all these
bet.
years later, where I'm like, yeah, everybody needs somebody to talk to. And I have no idea what it's like to be somebody else. So I do make the time. If
Yeah.
somebody stops me, I
Yeah.
make the
No,
time.
and I think I'm sort of similar. Like, I think I've always, and I don't know what it is, and I cannot explain it, but someone, yeah, will always end up telling me their life story and, the grocery shopping line, or just randomly, speak, like even on a
Mm-hmm.
plane or something like that. Like, I don't know what it is, but yeah, so I feel
Yeah.
like you and I are
I, I,
connected like
I
that.
think
Yeah.
totally. Totally. And I think too it's got a lot to do with
Mm,
being empathic. And I think people who need that kind of search out the empath, so to speak. And to be honest with you, that was something that I had to
yeah.
learn to harness. Like I had to learn to, especially the line of work that I got into, is like I needed to figure out I can't join my clients in their well.
Yeah.
I'm going to help them. So I call myself a recovering empath because I remember feeling, when I went to malls or I went to concerts,
Hmm.
feeling overwhelmed, but I didn't realize at the time exactly
Yeah.
what was happening. So kind of learn to harness that. And I teach other people too, like, hey, if you're bebopping along and all of a sudden you feel like you're going to cry, it's probably somebody else's energy that
Yeah,
you're picking up on.
perhaps. That definitely would like come into it.
And I think a lot of first responders are
Yeah.
empathic
Yeah. Well, I think
for
it's
sure.
definitely, yeah, helps us
For
in
sure.
our line of work, but learning, like you're saying, learning that ability to separate is, like you're saying, incredibly
Mm-hmm.
important, because otherwise you can just get so burnt out on other people's loss and grief and tragedy, and it's we carry
Yeah, for
enough
sure.
of our own to then have to have that like vicarious
Mm-hmm.
trauma that is so easy to burden ourselves with too.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
yeah, no, that
absolutely.
makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
And so sort of, I guess maybe like how long were you considering becoming dispatcher before you sort of took the leap?
It was probably less than a year
Hmm.
I had kicked it around. And I knew that all my local departments were hiring. So I just thought, I have nothing to lose.
Hmm.
I've got a job. I've got nothing to lose. This seems really cool and really interesting, and I love helping people. So this is a way to help
Yeah.
people on a different scale. So I did. So I went through the hiring process with one of my departments locally. I made it to the hiring board. They took the first 8. I was number 9 on the list,
Always the way, isn't
so I didn't get
it?
hired there. Well, it's funny because looking at it now, I believe everything happens
Hmm.
for me, not to me. Um, and it led me in a different direction. So I went through and was in the hiring process with a couple different departments, and ultimately chose the
Hmm.
one that I was at. But yeah, I would say the nudge to start trying was probably less than a year.
And like you mentioned
Yeah.
briefly before, and as long as you're comfortable talking about it, Jen, you mentioned the loss of your mum, and from knowing part of your story, I know that is quite entwined and an integral part of your journey into becoming a first responder.
Hmm.
If you're in a place to, would you mind sort of telling us a little bit about that, or as much as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. The day that I found my mom unresponsive was the day that Wellness in the Uniform was born, was the day that it was my journey
Hmm.
home to myself, in a way that it took a while, but I didn't realize it was all happening again for me
Hmm.
on in the big picture. So I needed to call on my mom, and I went to her house, and found her in her bed, unresponsive, and called it in, got my local fire department and a faceless friend that I'll never forget, the dispatcher that I talked to. And she, through her words, helped me lift my mom off the bed onto the ground so I could start compressions on her. And ribs were breaking, and I was like, what is that sound? And she goes, those are her ribs, keep going. So I did compressions until fire arrived, and unfortunately she was pronounced dead at the scene. And like I said, it was the beginning of so many different changes in my life that I didn't realize were all intertwined. It was a time where my marriage had already been not great. And at the time, my husband was MIA on the worst day of my life. And it was just this whole perfect storm of the undoing of everything all at one time, right? And so with my mom, I took so much ownership of, I'm so glad it was me that found her and not my siblings or my dad or anybody else. And everything that I was feeling, I was suppressing. I didn't have time to feel it. I was in the hiring process. The day before her funeral I had an interview that I had to go to. And I didn't want to be the girl to say, can I get a pass? Yeah. Because you are just a number. We've all been through the process, and they'll just skirt right past you, and you've already invested
and especially
so much energy and so much
out
time.
On that previous list, like you would have been really involved, and
Totally. I was like, yeah, not now. I don't, so everything I was feeling, I was resisting. And as we know, what we resist persists, and it has a way of backing up on us. And so, so I was just completely numb and going through the motions, and got hired and didn't realize the magnitude of my post-traumatic stress injury until I was in the control room and taking medical calls. And I would get a CPR call, and just my body would start shaking. And I would, tunnel vision, couldn't hear, couldn't see. And I didn't know what was happening. I thought, wow, you really cannot do this job. And I didn't realize that it was starting to back up on me. Everything that I hadn't processed was starting to back up on me. And so it did at work. And then there was a re-upping of my CPR certification, and I couldn't press on the dummy. I felt like I was going to pass out, and my supervisor was there, and I didn't want to let them know, hey, something's wrong with me. So I just kept drudging through the waters, but I knew my days were numbered. I knew I cannot do this. So I kept working until the powers that be decided, this is not a good match anymore. Not to mention, in tandem, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating. My husband and I were completely at odds and talking separation and divorce. So here I had my mom die, this whole huge career change, and now my marriage was dying. So it was a whole storm of everything. But it led me to an awareness of, I worked with a lot of amazing people at my department, but I still didn't trust that I could go to any one of them and say, I'm struggling. Something is wrong, and I don't know what.
Well,
because I didn't want to appear weak.
It's hard enough being like a veteran first responder in any of the branches to admit that, let alone when you're new on the job and you're trying to prove yourself and all that kind of thing. So I think sometimes for newer people, it's actually almost harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you feel like, I would imagine it's the same with a field training officer and all the things, but when you're in the control room, everybody's listening to what you're saying. Every keystroke, every on the phone, every swallow, everything. So you're kind of under the microscope, not just from your CTO, but from everybody else in the room who can hear you. So I just felt like I was a complete shell of myself at the time. And everything started backing up on me to the point of where I could not ignore how broken it seemed I was. And so I had a girlfriend in near the end of my dispatching career. She said, "Hey Jen, I booked a private group meditation class for all of us." Actually, it was a former hairdresser girlfriend. She's like, "For all of us from the salon, do you want to go?" And I'm like, "No, I don't hug trees, you weirdo. I don't smoke pot. Like, I don't do that sort of thing. Like, meditation's weird. No." And so, kicking and screaming, and she was like, "Girl, you look like you're dying, and you are not the same person that you used to be. Come with me, please." And I cried and cried the whole class. I had no idea what was happening. But that was the beginning of my journey home to myself, because like I said, I felt so vacant from my body. I felt so just a whippering willow with the wind, and I just had no idea what I needed. So that meditation class was the beginning of a huge transition for my life.
But like you're saying, Jen,
so
understandably so, because it's brought you to where you are now, which we will definitely get to. But I mean, everything you're talking about, like just before we jumped on today, I was doing a university lecture on studying psychology, and it was talking about stress and how it shows up and all that kind of thing, and just the certain stresses that we go through in our lifetime. And you had 3 of the most significant that anyone can go through in the span of 6-12 months, like career transition, loss of your mum, and then a relationship breakdown. Like, even just one of those has the propensity to send someone spiraling. So it's actually really a testament to how strong you are as an individual, that you were able to survive for so long without breaking down completely. But
well, and to be completely transparent, it wasn't without the dark days and without the suicide ideations. It was there were many days where I didn't know how I was going to get through. It was literally moment to moment, and I thought about how I could end my life and where I could do it, and how could I do it and not be a burden for everybody. And I went there for sure. But I'm very fortunate that my will to live was louder than my will to die. And I hang my hat on that. I am a very proud auntie, and I couldn't do that to my nieces and my nephew. I just couldn't. So fortunately for me, I had them. And there was just enough light poking through the dark where it kept me. I just kept leaning forward, and I thought, if I just keep leaning forward, something's going to catch me. Either somebody or something or something. So I consider myself incredibly fortunate that.
And it also sounds like you have a great network, support of friends who could actually call you out to be like, you look terrible. Like, we can see it's having a physiological, reaction and effect, that we can see that you're not yourself. We can see that you're struggling. Try something new,
And when you're in it, you think you are like masking it all like a pro, and like, nope, nobody can read this. Like, I got this. I'm still put together. I'm still me. And yeah, my girlfriend, and then when I was going before I announced my divorce, my sister was like, something's not right. Like, again, I went through not eating. I just couldn't eat because of the stress. She's like, you look like death. Like, what's going on? So, and I often say to people, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And that's when your soul tribe shows up. Is when you need them most. And fortunately for me, my soul tribe showed up in a big way, and I'm grateful.
That's wonderful. And so, talk to me. I guess so. Was it 11 months all in that you were in a dispatcher role?
So yeah, so I lasted 11 months through the process.
Okay. Yeah.
And my department, like I said, made the decision for me. And oh my gosh, I'm so grateful in so many ways.
Yeah. And that was something I was actually wanted to like ask you about while I threw my phone away. That I was wondering whether there was any part of you sort of looking back, whether there was like any bitterness or disappointment, or you kind of see it just as like a stepping stone on like your path and your journey to where you are now.
You know what's so interesting to me? I will never forget it. I had been feeling like, looking at it now and knowing what I know now, I had been having those intuitive nudges of like, girl, we need to look at this. And I was like, I was so hyper focused on just do. And the day that I was, my last day, I was driving on the freeway to my department and I was speeding. And I had a CHP roll up next to me and he looks over at me and he shakes his head.
Oh dear.
And I was like, was that some sort of message that he didn't pull me over. He didn't tell me to slow down. He just shook his head at me. And I was like, okay. So anyway, got to work. My manager pulled me into the office and said, hey, this is the decision. And I was emotional, but I have no bitterness. I have no hard feelings at all. I had some tough people that I worked with, but even them, I'm so grateful for them, because they were all part of my journey that led me to where I am now, led me to, gosh, I would love to be a resource for other first responders who might be struggling, and they're not sure where to turn. You know, and a lot of times, a lot of first responders don't reach out because they don't want to be judged. You know, in the control room too, if you let somebody know to the extent that I was struggling, there's a good chance that somebody might be doubting my ability, you know, or somebody else's ability of like, oh gosh, they just poured their heart out to me. How can I trust that they're going to get their stuff together if something goes down?
No, that makes sense.
But yeah, I have zero bad vibes or zero animosity towards my department or anybody that I worked with.
And I think it's super common too, like when we have like this goal in mind, we just get that tunnel vision. So you were like, well, you know, I want to be I don't want to be a dispatcher. I want to be a first responder. So yeah, I lost my mom and my marriage is crumbling, but you know what? Like this is my focus. So like I'm gonna just shove all of that off to the side. And even like you're saying, you were having these nudges. You're like, I'm probably not okay, and maybe this isn't the right thing for me. But no, this is what I want. So this is what I'm going to focus on. And I think we can all get caught up in that mindset sometimes.
Totally. And when you're in survival mode like that, you can only see what is directly in front of you. You can't see big picture stuff, or it's hard to see big picture stuff.
Very much so. And so talk to me about what sort of helped you cope and recover in the aftermath of losing your mum, and now sort of going from one career change to then going maybe, oh shit, what am I going to do now? And the separation with your husband, like there was a lot going on. What helped you get through that period?
Fortunately for me, I am incredibly resourceful. So within 4 hours of being let go from that job, I had another job lined up.
Wow.
I knew I needed a decompression time. Not to mention, I had just said goodbye a year prior to my clientele of 20 years and gifted them to other stylists and stuff. So I didn't want to sabotage their business by saying, hey, I'm back. Because I really didn't know what I needed at that time. I really was just so broken, cracked open, I would say, that I didn't know what I needed. So I took a job as a basically a manager of a chiropractic office. I just did paperwork and I talked to very few people, and it was exactly the decompression time that I needed because nobody was going to die on the other end of the phone. I wasn't really needed, so to speak, right? So that was my recalibration time. And in tandem with that, I had gone to the meditation with my girlfriend and the group of hairdressers, and the gal who would become my mentor and one of my dear friends, she suggested, hey, why don't you come in for a Reiki session? And I was like, what is that? Reiki session? That sounds weird. I don't know. so, so, so I went, and basically I could, so Reiki is give a little backstory on Reiki. It is a Japanese healing modality for stress relief.
Okay.
So if you imagine that it's acupuncture without needles.
Yeah.
It services all the energy centers in our body that can become kinked or cut off. And so she did a session on me, and I immediately felt, I don't know what's happening in my body, but I felt like things were starting to move again.
Yeah.
Things were starting to flow again. Not to mention, I was starting to tune into the answers that were in here that I couldn't hear on my own at the time. So that was paramount in my healing journey.
Yeah.
And then it was a few sessions down the road that my now mentor was like, have you ever considered doing this? And I was like, no, I'm a hairdresser. I'm a first responder. You know what I mean? So it took a minute to wrap my head around it, but I knew how good I felt after just my first session that I became so curious about, okay, well, what if I actually do a Reiki 1 certification and I learn I get my own attunement and I can turn my own hands on and start to heal my own body. And then I just kept going from there and to master. And now it's what I do for a living.
Wow, that's incredible. And so was that sort of on par with like the meditation stuff? Like, or was it sort of somewhat? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's hand in hand. So any given Reiki session, you have a merriment of not only the energy, but also meditation, right? So it is a no touch energetic massage coupled with a meditation practice that's interactive. I'm asking my clients, what are you noticing in your body? If you can see an energy, a ball of energy, where is it in your body? Where in your body are you holding the pain?
So very almost like a very like somatic exercise sort of thing.
Very much so. Very much so. And I consider it debriefing the mind because we're moving all the other stuff out of the way. The same amount of stuff that I believed meditation was, you turn off your brain. No, the average adult mind has, as you know, 70 to 100,000 thoughts a day that fly through depending on the brain. Meditation is just a way of refocusing where your attention is going. You don't have to forget about everything else. Just go to the person's voice that's guiding you. And in that guidance, you tune into this whole inner guidance system that is within you. And gone are the days of you asking every Tom, Dick, and Harry what you should do, for a major life decision, or even simple ones of like, hey, should I take the freeway or should I take the back roads? You'll get an intuitive nudge the more you flex that muscle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I've heard you speak a little bit too about like breath work, which I obviously feel sort of is all a part of, what you're talking about there.
Yeah. And I teach and I coach a lot of academies, and I give them breathing techniques to add to their tool belt, because what you want to do in any given situation, because from your experience too, you go from 0 to jacked stress response in no time at all. But how do you mitigate that? How do you mitigate the adrenaline dump? How do you come back down into your body after you've spiraled up and out? And the breathing techniques that I teach, it is a way for the folks I work with to anchor back in, to return your body back to homeostasis, back to rest and repair, where that parasympathetic nervous system is like, ooh, yes, more of this, please.
And jumping out of like that fight or flight sort of response. Because
Right.
I was actually listening to I think it was a podcast or something the other day, and they were talking about say like in the middle of like a CISM debrief and all that sort of thing. One of the things that they do is put like a bottle of water like on every seat, so every single person has that bottle of water. And if they're sort of retelling, the event that happened, and their involvement in it, and then you can kind of sort of see that that person's like reliving it, they'll just stop them and be like, "Oh, you."
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Just I think like how you were saying, like being able to like control your breathing helps bring you back to your parasympathetic nervous system. It's the same as like having like a sip of water, because it what's the word, like instigates your like digestive system sort of
yeah.
thing. So like with
Yeah.
all that, it kind of like taking you out of like the sympathetic nervous system where you're in that fight or flight, adrenaline's flying, all that kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then like helping your body calm back down.
Yeah. Well, and I knew enough of my time as a dispatcher that they don't have time.
Yeah.
They don't get to go code 4 or go back to the firehouse and talk about it. The next one's coming in. So I thought, holy smokes, we have to equip the helpers of what can they do right now in your chair when you can't unplug and you can't leave the room. What can
Yeah.
you do? How do you regulate your body? So there's some visual debriefing the mind techniques that I've taught,
Mm-hmm.
and the breathing ones are huge for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's funny. So like I probably in the last 12 months, I've learned about box breathing, which again is sort of has so many different terms, like, sometimes they call it tactical breathing and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And, giving it some big, tough, manly sounding
Yeah.
names. So, they teach us the like Navy SEALs and all that kind of thing, and probably
Right.
SWAT members. So it's I think it's so interesting that, there are these techniques that you kind of try to do to like prepare yourself before the shit really goes down. And
Right.
then there's like, the similar ones to help bring you back down from when you
Yeah.
have sort of gone through it too.
It's huge, and a huge compliment that I took away was I taught CPT for one of the local police departments for communications, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a veteran dispatcher that came up to me and said, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and this was the first thing tangible from a
Wow.
training that I
Yeah,
can take with me into the control room and implement at any time, which
that's awesome.
huge that
Yeah,
it's something, and there these techniques are so simple and they're so brainer, right? But it's when it's presented as a wait a minute, this is how you're in charge of
yeah,
regulating your own body.
yeah,
So pre-wired that our survival is based on someone outside of us,
yeah,
that our mom in utero, and then our parents, and then we get into these marriages or relationships where someone outside of us is still in charge of our survival and making us feel.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, 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 no. You tend to your own garden
Yeah,
here and you get yourself back on the ground. Yes, we are here to help you, but I don't want anybody to be so dependent on me that they can't function or they don't have the tools that
yeah,
in their arsenal.
yeah. No, and that makes total sense. And I think as well, like I sort of talk about it a lot, like with this population, of why I think coaching is such a wonderful resource for first responders is first responders, like they are in control,
Right.
the cop, firefighter, like paramedic, you rock up to the scene and everyone is looking to you to go take control, take charge, like control that situation. So control is
Right.
such a important element for people who perform those roles. So like the
Right.
gift that you're giving them by saying, oh, no, 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 like even when you're in this heightened state and you're stressed and it's all go, 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 like I'm still giving you a tool that
Yeah.
allows you to remain in control. And I think that's
Right.
awesome. So, so
Well,
great.
and I listen, I have nothing against therapists or therapy or
Mm,
anything of that magnitude. I have used therapy in years past, not for the shitstorm that I went through. I found that I was my own healing modality
yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
through my mentor and other Soul Tribe members. But I went to my therapist wanting to know, what should I do?
Yeah.
I was still seeking for someone outside of me to tell me what I should do. And what I do as a coach is I help shine the flashlight on your own answers.
Yeah.
I am not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't do, nor should anybody else, in my opinion. But I am going to help you realize you've got everything you could ever need lying within inside of you. Let's just access it. Let's just tune in, tap in, and turn on. And my goodness. And that's where I think the misconception is about between therapy and coaching. And I think that, like I said, I know it's there, and I know a lot of wonderful therapists, but none of those therapists were able to help me to the extent that what I went through yielded what I live now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, like it's one thing that I definitely agree with you, and I think we're definitely on the same page about, is the fact that, you know, like you're saying, there's a place for therapists, because, you know, as a coach, we can't like diagnose, you know, a mental illness or anything like that. And if people need medication, like there's obviously like such a place. But I look at it as like it's like a hierarchy of need, a hierarchy of, you know, not necessarily Maslow's hierarchy of need, but as in, you know, like, are you just a person who just needs to kind of chat to a peer support or a person at work, or even your spouse, and you're like, okay, I'm good? Or are you significantly struggling and need to go see a therapist? Whereas there's such a broad gap between those two spots. And I think that is where coaching fits so perfectly. And like how I sort of choose to describe like what I do is like it's bridging the gap between peer support and clinical services. And like you're saying, and I think I've sort of listened to an episode you did on the Overwatch Collective with Kelsey, and you know, I think we agree. Whereas like I personally think that everyone has all of the answers to their own questions inside of them. They either just don't have anyone asking them the right questions, or they don't have anyone listening adequately enough.
Right.
And that's where your like torch analogy like really resonated with me, because it's like, yeah, like, you know, it might be hiding under a rock or in the back of the closet or something like that, but deep down, so many people actually kind of know what they need, but no one's asking them, or they're actually too scared to face up and go, you know what, like I know that I could actually be changing some of the really negative things that are going on in my life, but I'm either too scared, I'm too like fearful, I'm ashamed. I don't know if I have the support, or it just seems really fucking hard, and I don't know if I can face up to that.
Totally. And couple that with the subconscious mind is stuck in a program. It's stuck in a loop that it keeps telling you the same bullshit story over and over and over again. So when my clients see me, and all I ask is that they have an open mind, you know, just go with me on this journey and just follow my voice. And we're tuning in to where is that coming from? Because we know our intuition never shames, blames, or worries. We know our ego doesn't like change, wants to stay stuck in its mud, because this is my mud and I know it and I'm good with it, even though I'm not good with it.
Yeah, but it's mine. It's mine. I own it.
But it's mine, and I can control it, and it's predictable. That's what it's predictable. And then we have our inner critic, you know, that's always short selling us that we're not good enough. And then we have our inner child. And there's a lot of wounded inner children walking around out there with this story that they've been perpetuating. And so when we shine a light and we allow those three characters to speak freely for the moment, we can hear, well, wait a minute, that's bullshit. I am more than capable of whatever. And so all of a sudden, this whole program is turned on its head, because they now realize not only was it a lie, that program, and it was short selling them, but their intuition is already feeding them of course you're more than capable. Of course you're lovable. Of course you're valued and valuable and cherished and adored and all these things. So, like I said, I just hold a flashlight. I just help guide them to this place. And then, just like anything else, it's a muscle. We build off
Yeah.
of it. You know, the more you
Yeah.
flex it and the more you tune into it, um, the more and more you realize, oh shoot, yeah, okay, this is a game changer, and I do want to change my story. I don't like feeling like crap.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big deal. It's a very big deal. But like I said, I know the sandbox that I play in.
Yeah.
I am not trying to be something I am not, but there's a reason why I'm not a therapist. There's a reason why I haven't gone through the channels
Hmm.
to become a therapist, because I feel I have more value what I
Hmm.
do than wearing a therapist title.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I don't think, like I'm studying to also become like a therapist, right? But I don't feel that takes anything away from like my coaching, and my plan is to kind of offer both, because there is so much, outside forces kind of get pulled into like the therapy realm. And like, obviously, you've got to follow the DSM and all that kind of thing. And you've got the insurance companies to deal with and all that kind of thing. What I love about coaching is I can coach someone on the other side of the world. I can coach someone from any of the 50 states here in America. Like it's something that, because it's client led, like I think it does empower them so much on their journey. And I think that when you are in control and you are the one taking the steps to better yourself, I think you have so much more ownership over it. And I think it
Right.
empowers people so much more, or
Right.
just in a different way, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
probably like the best way to go about it. And how you were talking about like the different aspects of ourselves, like one thing, I sometimes really like to ask people is, I think that you've kind of got three separate parts of you that can give you an answer to a question or a problem that you're facing, but you aren't always asking the right one. And I think it's like you've got your head, your heart, and your gut. And so what your head might be telling you about a situation and what your heart is telling you and what your gut's going to tell you can be three very different answers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think it's about figuring out who is the role, which is the right body part, or which is the right part of yourself to be asking to get the right answer, or the true answer,
Yeah.
perhaps, is like a better way to look at it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and
so,
and
yeah.
we've all had those moments in our life where we've had that intuitive nudge and we ignored it, and then
Mm,
some form of hell, exploded,
yeah.
where it was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that fire was hot.
Mm,
I didn't want to touch that, but evidently I needed to.
hmm.
So it's learning to listen to this whole inner guidance system and learning that it's safe to be in your body,
Yeah.
and you can trust your body. You can
Yeah.
trust that your body knows how to be well. You can trust that your body knows how to heal. Um, for various folks, it may look different. It's not a one size fits all,
Hmm.
but it's a one size fits most. I have
Yeah.
been finding. Um,
Yeah.
so as long as there is, somebody with an open heart of, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. And that is the thing as well. Like, I think someone can maybe engage in therapy even when they might be a little bit resistant. Whereas with coaching, it's like, mate, you got to be all in with me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do the work for you. Like the way that I was taught and the way that I practice is it's a partnership. We're partners in this. We have a relationship, and I am going to support you in all of the ways that you need, and we're going to work on whatever it is that you want to work on. But I'm not over here doing the heavy lifting, and you're just like going to reap all the benefits. It's like
Right.
you're going to be doing the heavy lifting, but I'm going to be there to support you all the way through it.
Yeah. Well, and also the cultivating a plan, but also the accountability of, I know
Hmm.
my what and why. I
Yeah.
know my what and why on what I do, and
Hmm.
I've just trusted the universe of the how and when. Um,
Hmm.
but I need my clients to be clear on their what and why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once they start to figure that out, I have one of the best seats in the house to everybody's glow up, and I have a front
Yeah,
row seat, and it is so rewarding, and
isn't
I am
it?
so incredibly humbled and honored that my path led me to where I am, and I get to now
Hmm.
watch others journey home to themselves and
Yeah,
succeed and feel good and remember that we didn't come here to endure life. We came here to enjoy it.
yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So,
No, and it's like, the reason why the name of the podcast is what it is, and it's like the motto of my business of I will hold space for your darkness. Like, we're exposed to so much darkness as first responders, and just offering myself as a place and as a person that they can come and talk to me and debrief or work on their relationships, or whatever it is that they
mhm,
choose to do with me. It is, I ultimately, like you, I see it as a privilege that
mm,
someone chooses to work with me, they choose to trust me, they choose to know that I am a safe place for them to be able to offload that
right.
darkness that sometimes
Yeah,
they hold on to.
for sure. Everybody
And
needs somebody to talk to. That is for sure.
exactly. And so talk to me what like you sort of said earlier on that the day, you lost your mum was kind of the day that wellness in the uniform, got its initial spark. Like
Hmm.
how did all of the amazing things that you sort of trained in now, how did that all come together for you to go, okay, this is exactly what I want to do and this is how I want to go about it?
Well, it was like I said, it was a meditation on I knew my what and I knew my why. I just had to
Hmm.
trust the how and when everything unfolded. And I got very clear on I knew I needed to do more for the first responder community. I work with all walks of life
Hmm.
and I welcome all walks of life, but I knew from my personal experience I wasn't trained where to put the shit when you walked out of the building. I
Yeah.
was trained you're supposed to eat well, you're supposed to sleep, all of that basic stuff. But as far as being a human and
Yeah.
walking out of the building, I didn't know where to put it.
Yeah.
And so as a result of going through the meditation and going through the Reiki, when I first got turned on to it, I knew there was just such a curiosity in my heart, and I knew there was more layers to delve into. There was more of an awakening, so to speak. And I was all in, and I just started um, building curriculum. I didn't know who I was going to talk to. I didn't know how I was going to talk to, but I just knew this is what I want to cover. This is a little bit of my story, a little bit, I don't know what it's like to do the job for 30 years, but I knew enough of the toe getting wet that,
Yeah.
wow, we got to do something a little different. We got to change the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and I am, again, by universe surprising and delighting me, the right people in my soul tribe started showing up. I hooked up with who's now a dear girlfriend of mine. She was a dispatcher for 30 years, and still has her hands in the rehire world. And
Hmm.
she's like, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Here's this person to talk to this person," and I just had to trust. It
Yeah.
took a lot of, you know what, my heart is pure and I'm just going to trust the timing. And so here I am. It started, I would say I really started building curriculum late 2019 and then during COVID. I
Okay.
was just so invested in, I had
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Everybody had time. I had time to, to figure out, okay, how do I want this to go? What do I want this to be called? And who do I want to reach?
Hmm.
And then, like I said, it's the momentum's been going ever since.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and I think I sort of was a bit similar. Like I went on this coaching journey, just just wanting to help people. Like it's all I've
Mm-hmm.
done. Like my whole career, my whole life is always just wanting to help people. And I think I was equally like probably maybe about 12 months in when I was like I I think I went back home to Australia for the first time for in 3 years because we like got locked out because of COVID, and bunch of my friends back home are all still in the job. you know,
Mm-hmm.
mostly police officers and stuff like that. And I felt that really unique pull that I think when you are a part of that community, it always stays with you and it always
Mm-hmm.
sits with you. And I just felt that pull back, and I was just kind of like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. That's what I feel passionately about. That's what I think is not more important than others, but it's more important to me for right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
There's a special place in my heart for first responders, and there always will be.
Hmm.
Not just because of the experience, but also it's it's such a it's such a gift that they're giving society,
Yeah.
and it's such a toll that it's taking that most don't know about. And not to discredit any profession in any capacity,
Mm.
everything can be hard and everything
Yeah.
can need a place to be put. I totally get that.
Hmm.
um, but I also know, with getting hooked up with the Overwatch Collective, that the numbers are still a reflection of our lack of, or not lack of, our redirection, our reprioritization of, you've got to take care of your people. And that's why I say I'm so incredibly grateful that I work with departments who are invested in
Yeah.
their people's well-being, and they have enough of an open mind to take a chance on a wellness coach and a Reiki master and bring me in and have me talk to their folks and say, you know what, I don't have all the answers, but I can show you how you can
Yeah.
get your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Very much so.
yeah,
And
because as
and
we know,
yes,
it starts at the top. It starts at the
it
top. You
does.
have to have buy-in at the top.
Hmm. Yeah. 100%. Excuse me. And so yeah, so tell me, like, how did you, like, did the Overwatch Collector come across you? Did you come across them? Tell me about that process.
So we
While I take a
there's
quick sip out of their mug.
yeah, perfect. We have a mutual friend who he owns a CrossFit gym here in
Hmm.
Gilroy. And he brought me in to do a breathing class, or clinic rather, before they did the Murph challenge, the Memorial Day Murph, cross range, post range CrossFit is the name of it, workout.
Okay.
And so he brought me in, and in passing, he's like, "Hey, I got some friends that you should probably talk to, and they've got this thing that they're starting to do." And so I messaged them on Instagram,
Hmm.
and I said, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do." And Greg called me, I don't know, 2 days later, and he was on speaker in the phone in the car with Kelsey, and it was like instant fast friends. Okay, we're like-minded folks, more Soul Tribe members. And it just started rolling from there. And so I introduced the Overwatch and Kelsey and Donna to the department that I work with, and they came out for some family wellness nights as
Awesome.
resource. And
Yeah.
it's been going ever since.
That's fantastic.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's such a wonderful organization to know of, to be, affiliated with, to be a resource for, and the work that they're doing, it's just so important because
Mm-hmm.
and even, like, like we're saying, in terms of people having other options, not just peer support, not just clinical services, but also like having coaches to turn to, like the first responder community having the Overwatch Collective to turn to when, they're not being supported in regards to their mental health by their chiefs or their bosses. The EAP system is up shit creek, and it's not working for them, or they just aren't comfortable, and for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, they're collating so many culturally competent therapists and coaches, and so many resources for people to be able to reach out to and get access
Yeah,
to.
and
So.
and I take their brochures and their cards, because I work with a lot of academies, so we're
Hmm.
catching them before they reach
Awesome.
burnout, before they
Yeah.
reach, dark thoughts and relationship problems and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. So we're cultivating a baseline for them of like, listen, your thriving is priority.
Yeah.
So here is how I can help you. Here is how the Overwatch can help you. And you're not alone. Period. End of story. When you think you are not.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's I've been doing a tracking and retention wellness plan with a lot of the academies, and so what we'll do is before they get into with dispatch, before they get into the control room with their CTOs, we do a baseline of where are you, and I have a
Yeah.
series of questions that I ask, and then we meet back again after their second rotation, and then at that point there's enough buy-in of, okay, this department supports me,
Yeah.
but now I know that Jen is there, and I've had several people reach out to me, and we'll do a remote session over the phone. Like, Jen, I'm feeling anxious and
Yeah.
whatever. And it's so cool to see and to be a part of. 1
That's
million
awesome.
%.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
especially like you're saying, to have like that buy-in from the department and to be, hitting them the minute they're walking through that academy gate, to be like, here are some techniques, here are the resources, and like clearly it's working because they know that you're like going to be like that constant, that you're not there to solve their problems, but you're there to give them tools, and they can
right.
reach out to you,
Well,
should they need to.
and as far as the Overwatch goes, I wish that my services were utilized more, because I'm incredibly reasonably priced for the
Yeah.
reason of accessibility.
Hmm.
So I see these sessions that are like, we need to cover $270, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 95 for the hour, because I want to be accessible to people, and I
Hmm.
don't want to outprice myself,
Yeah.
right? I want to be able to, if the time comes where you're in a position where you no longer need the
Yeah.
support of the Overwatch, you can float this without it being a huge financial strain for you.
Yeah.
So accessibility is huge for me, which
Hmm.
is why I keep my prices what they are for one-on-ones.
Yeah, no, and that makes so much sense too. And I think and that's why I was so excited to have you on today, because I think that not everyone not everyone knows what coaching is.
Right.
And I think it's like equally the same as, like, there's so many different modalities for therapy. You know what I mean? Like, so many people might reach out and go see a therapist. And if that person is kind of more of like, a Freudian therapist, and they want to dig deep and find out your mummy and daddy issues and whatever else, and someone's going to be like, oh, like that's not for me. Similarly, like, there's different coaching modalities, like
Mm-hmm.
yours is very different to mine, but we obviously have lots of things in common. But I don't do meditation, I don't do Reiki or anything like that, but we help people in different ways. But I think what we have in common is the passion behind helping that population. And I think you're right. Like, I think I think coaching is very much something that is probably like underutilized, simply because maybe there isn't like enough out there to be well known of it, or people might just be a bit like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. So I
Right.
think it's
Well,
yeah.
and for me, I didn't, to be fair, I didn't go through the channels at my department because I
Mhm.
didn't trust, but I
Yeah.
also thought, I don't want to sit across from anybody who has no idea
Yeah.
what I do, or what I
Yeah.
heard, or what I'm carrying with me around,
Hmm.
just trying to survive and trying to not drown in. So I appreciate the culturally competent. I appreciate the people who have an idea and who know what it's like. But like I said, there's so many different options, and that is the beautiful thing about the Overwatch Collective. It's a culmination of all these different tools and techniques, um, and being a platform that people can use.
Yeah. No, very much so. And yeah, it's good to be a part of them. It's good to know that they're doing, such great work, and hopefully it just continues to keep growing, and we can continue to to be affiliated and be resources for them for,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as long as it
absolutely.
as long as it keeps going. All right. Are you comfortable, Jen, if I put, you know, your contact details in the show notes, or if anyone
Yeah,
wants to
totally.
reach out? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you are Wellness in the Uniform on Instagram?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And do you have like a website, or is it kind of all just purely
Website
like,
is under construction.
cool.
The either email or my phone or Instagram is the best ways to reach me.
All right, cool. I will pop all of that information in the show notes. So if
Okay.
anyone is interested, they can reach out to Jen. Equally, if someone is listening and they're feeling, or they've like something that Jen and I have spoken about, like, resonates with them, and like we're saying, they aren't in a financial position right now, the Overwatch Collective will offer financial assistance for anyone who is interested in either mine or Gen services, and they don't really feel like, yeah, they're in a position where they can afford it right now. Reach out to the Overwatch Collective, because that's what they do.
Yep.
That's what they do.
Yes, indeed.
Um, All right. Well, I want to say thank you for your time today, Jen. We've had a few technical issues, so I have no idea how this episode is going to come out.
It'll be amazing.
Let's hope so. It might be a shit show, but we will see. What I wanted to just finish off is, normally I ask our guests 2 questions at the end of our episodes. And so, like I said before, the name of the podcast is "I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness." It's in regards to, all of the darkness that we see as first responders, and we hear as dispatchers, and all that kind of thing. So the first question is, what do you do to hold space for your darkness, Jen?
Oh man, if I feel any discord at all, I go ground myself. I go plant myself in the sand at the beach. I do a meditation. I tune into the breath work. I just really anchor back in and tune back into myself for sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think anchoring is so important, and something that I don't think a lot of us know how to do very well.
Well, and that's part of the visualization practice when we debrief the mind, is I actually have you visualize, imagine there's little tree roots coming from your heels and you're anchored into the earth, and the wind will blow, but you are unshakable, and get really comfortable with feeling grounded that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I really like that. And the second question I ask is, what can someone do? So whether it's friend, a partner, a relative, anything like that, what can they do in order to support you in holding space for that darkness?
That's a great question. Because of my journey, and because I realized I am valued and I am valuable, I ask for what I need. Nobody else can no, if you don't love yourself, how can anybody else? But if you're not asking for what you need, people don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So I ask for what I need. I am with a police officer, and I'm I ask him, or I tell him, hey, I'm gonna go take the day. I'm gonna go recharge, and he's incredibly supportive. He is tuned in, tapped in, and turned on to his own wellness and his own resilience training, and so it's very easy to ask for what we need.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And again, I think advocating for ourselves is so important, but it is, you're right, like, it's actually something you kind of have to learn. Like, you have to learn and you have to practice it and get good at it, because otherwise you're left feeling like, oh, I'm a burden if I ask for this. Or, but like you're saying, knowing yourself so well, you're like, no, I know that I need this, and I can advocate for myself.
Yeah. And again, it's more lengthy than that, but it's the being able to say no, being
Yes.
able to
No is a full sentence.
yes, being able to prioritize, I'm being asked to do this thing and it is not a hell yes in my body. So I'm going to be authentic and say, you know what? No, thank you. And everybody knows that with me, and in my family and my friends, if I get asked to do something and I'm like, you know what? It isn't a hell yes, but have fun.
Yeah.
And they know.
Yeah.
But it's also being able to to realize that being in your body is a safe place to be. And that
Mm-hmm.
means loving yourself. And I've had some clients that I have taken through a practice where I'm like, place your hands over your heart. Tell yourself, I love you. And
Yeah.
that's usually when the tears start to fall because they realize, oh my gosh, I couldn't remember the last time I said that to myself. And
Yeah.
if you don't love you, it's hard for anybody else to be let in on
Yeah.
that.
Very much so. And I think it's sort of something that I know I've done a lot of work on in the last couple of years is figuring out my self-worth
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that, oh, I know I'm worthy of time, I'm worthy of attention, I'm worthy of effort, I'm worthy of choosing myself and putting
Mm-hmm.
myself first, which
Mm-hmm.
when you've been a first responder, sometimes when you're the spouse of a first responder, when you're a mum, you just automatically put yourself last because you're like, no, everyone else's needs are more important than mine.
Right.
And then like when whatever analogy like you want to use, like when your cup is empty or,
Right.
it's like you
Right.
can't
And
help anyone
who
else.
told you that your well-being and your worth wasn't enough?
Yeah.
Who told you, and or who is perpetuating that story in your mind that it's, a program that you've downloaded and it's on repeat, and it's
Yeah.
bullshit. It's
Yeah.
absolute bullshit. And knowing thyself, that is a big thing that I work with clients of,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if I have this shoulder tap of, whoa, you need a day to just be nothing to anyone. And then I get asked to go to the soccer game and I'm like, and I know if I said yes and it was a no, I'd be showing up as a version that was not my best.
Yeah.
And I deserve my best. Those around me deserve the best of me, but I get to be the one that declares, what does that mean for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
No. Yeah. 100%. And I think it's all of those things. Yes. Like, and I don't know whether it's like that we're taught or we're just never, or we're never taught enough of like, yeah, no, no is okay. No is a full sentence. Boundaries are okay. And maybe it's just something that maybe as a society we've all become so much more aware of, and
Mm-hmm.
we see stuff online and we read and we do this and that. But um, like
Well,
I tie it back. Sorry, I'll just quickly
go ahead.
finish my point. I'll just sort of tie it back into the ownership that I think comes along with coaching. That like our clients and our partners, when they do the work, they feel the ownership of their own success and their own improvements and their own accomplishments and achievements. And I think, for me as well, like, yeah, like figuring out my self-worth and realizing it wasn't what it should have been, and working on that and moving it and improving it to where it is now and in such a
Mm-hmm.
good way. Like I have such
Yep.
pride about that.
Right. Well, and we know our brains, oh, they're so freaking rad in that you can reprogram them and you can
Mm-hmm.
fire and wire a new neural pathway with a new
Yes.
story in any given second, in any given day. All you have to do is persist in that new story.
Yep.
All you have to do is tune into, okay, how would that version of me feel, who
Yep.
was, a millionaire or in an amazing house or on a beach in Bora Bora? How would that version of me feel right
Yep.
now? And and not looking at the scarcity and lack of, okay, well, you're not here yet, but keeping tuning into that and persisting until it hardens into fact. And when you do that, by the way, because of law of attraction and like begets like,
Mm-hmm.
you're literally becoming a beacon
Yeah.
for more of that good feeling stuff to find you. Not only are you reprogramming your subconscious mind and wiring a new neural pathway, but you're conditioning the body to feel as
Yeah.
though it's already here. So you've got this head and heart coherence
Mm-hmm.
that happens where it's like, yes, more of this. So then when that thing actually manifests in the 3D in front of you, you're like, of course you're here. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Of course
Yes.
I'm, being treated like a queen because I manifested it. I
Mm-hmm.
manifested it from, I knew what I didn't want, so I know what I want. Or I know this is what I want to do and this is why I want to do it. The how and when, universe, I trust you. I say universe, it could be God, spirit, source, Buddha, Allah, whoever, whatever makes sense. But it is persisting in that reprogramming of more to this. And I don't know what it is, but I'm going to just persist. And then before your eyes, it literally hardens into fact.
Yeah. No,
And then
that.
the people around you say, gosh, you've changed. Gosh, you feel good to be around. Gosh, you don't drink anymore, or you don't have caffeine, or you're not putting things in your body to leave your body anymore, or, but you have to have the desire and the want, and you have to decide, I don't know what's next, but I know that I trust enough that I'm willing to explore what that is. And there's a version of me waiting to meet me. I just have to give them some attention, and I just have to be willing and have a little bit of courage and a little bit of bravery to try something different.
Yeah.
To get the result.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think it's, it kind of just makes it, that like underlying message is you can be healed in whatever way that you need to be. Like everything that you feel like is wrong, it can be made better. It can be healed. Like you're saying, neural pathways can be rewired and recreated like that. Any type of healing that you feel like you need, it can happen.
And realizing too, I don't know, this is happening for me. This contrast is not fun. There are some chapters that are not our favorite, but if it's yielding a clarity that you didn't have before, every day, it was worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
100%. Yeah.
Yes,
all right,
indeed.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for your time today and for putting up with everything technically that that happens. We're all hoping that this comes out fine. But yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for your beautiful, positive energy and the message that you've brought along today, because I really think that, it's sort of different than, any of the other guests I've had on. And it's been a real privilege to talk to you about all things coaching and everything that you're involved in, because it really sounds like you're making a difference right now. So.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for being a part of the Soul Tribe. I appreciate that.
That's all right.
For sure. That's how I look at the Overwatch Collective, is it's just a soul tribe coming together of like-minded folks that, oh man, it's so good when we get all together and there's enough room at the table for everyone, and
exactly,
everybody has a unique gift. And I'm so grateful to have met you and to have crossed paths with you. And
me too.
And I'm here however I can help you, or if there's anything you need, by all means.
I appreciate that, Jen, so much. Thank you. All right, this has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I've been your host, Erin Jane, and as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers. Hi guys, it's Erin Jane here. Firstly, thank you for listening to I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. This podcast really is for you, the listener, and I hope you're finding as much value in listening to these conversations as I am in having them. If you'd like to offer any feedback, suggest a subject matter, are interested in being a podcast guest, or would like to get in contact to receive first responder life and wellness coaching services, please reach out. You can find me on Instagram at Erin Jane Coaching, or my website, www.erinjanecoaching.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm so grateful to have you as part of this darkness community. Cheers.